My name is Melanie Thompson, and 2 hours ago, on my 34th birthday, I discovered my husband James showing our divorce papers to his secretary in our home office. 7 years of marriage reduced to legal documents they were reviewing between whispered laughs during MY celebration. The crystal champagne flute nearly slipped from my fingers as I stood frozen behind the partially open door, watching them conspire. The word divorce seemed to leap off the page he was pointing at. Before I tell you how I turned this betrayal into my greatest comeback, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button for more true stories of resilience. I met James Crawford at a charity gala in Boston 9 years ago. I was 25, ambitious, and had just landed a promising position at a boutique marketing firm. He was 30, already establishing himself as a rising star at his law firm, with perfectly tailored suits and a smile that could charm anyone in the room. We locked eyes across the auction tables, and by the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers and a promise to meet for dinner. Our romance was the kind that friends envied. James wooed me with thoughtfulness that seemed uncharacteristic for a hard-driving attorney. Weekend getaways to coastal bed and breakfasts, surprise picnics in the public garden, handwritten notes left in my work bag. Everything about our relationship felt intentional and special. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, presenting a princess-cut diamond ring during a private sunset sailing trip on the harbor, I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was an elegant affair at the Fairmont Copley Plaza. My father spared no expense for his only daughter, and James seemed equally determined to create the perfect day. 200 guests, a 7-tier cake, and a honeymoon in the Maldives. Looking back at those photos now, I can still feel the genuine happiness radiating from both of us. We were partners, equals, ready to build a life together. The early years of our marriage aligned with significant career growth for both of us. I moved from my entry-level position to account manager, then director of client services. My natural talent for understanding client needs and building marketing strategies that delivered measurable results earned me recognition in the industry. Meanwhile, James was making partner ahead of schedule at his firm, specializing in corporate law and building an impressive client roster. We worked hard, often late into evenings, but made time for each other. Sunday brunches became our sacred ritual, a time to connect and plan our future together. We talked about children, though we agreed to establish our careers first. Every promotion, every success was celebrated together, achievements that belonged to both of us. 3 years ago, we purchased our dream home in Brookline, a stunning colonial with a spacious backyard and the sort of kitchen I had always wanted. The house represented everything we had worked for together, a symbol of our success and partnership. I spent weekends selecting furniture, planning spaces, making it ours. James seemed equally invested, particularly in creating his home office, a handsome room with built-in bookshelves and a view of the garden. It was around 18 months ago that Amber Mitchell entered our lives. James's previous secretary had retired, and the firm hired Amber as her replacement. When James first mentioned her, his description was brief and professional, efficient, quick learner, good organizational skills. I met her at the firm's holiday party that December and found her pleasant enough, if somewhat reserved. She was 27, single, with sleek dark hair and the kind of effortless elegance that comes from being naturally slim. We chatted about the usual topics, discovering a shared interest in yoga, though I noticed how her eyes kept drifting back to James throughout our conversation. Initially, I made efforts to be friendly with Amber, understanding the importance of the relationship between an attorney and their secretary. I invited her to join us for dinner once when James needed to discuss an urgent case. I recommended my hairstylist when she complimented my highlights. I sent her a birthday card with a gift certificate to the spa I frequented. My mother had always taught me that kindness creates allies, and I saw no reason to view Amber as anything but a helpful presence in James's professional life. As time passed, my own career continued its upward trajectory. Last year, I was offered a position as Vice President of Client Strategy at one of Boston's most prestigious marketing firms, nearly doubling my salary and significantly raising my professional profile. The shift meant I was now earning considerably more than James, a fact I never emphasized, but which created a subtle shift in our dynamic. James expressed pride in my accomplishments publicly, but I noticed a new edge to his comments when we were alone, little digs about corporate superstars and questions about whether my new role would leave any time for real life. In retrospect, that period marked the beginning of changes in our relationship. James started working later, often arriving home after I had gone to bed. His phone became a closely guarded object, always face down or in his pocket. Weekend brunches were frequently canceled due to emergency client meetings. When I raised concerns, he dismissed them as paranoia brought on by my own work stress. Still, I pushed aside my uneasiness, focusing instead on planning my upcoming birthday celebration. 34 felt like an odd, in-between year, neither a milestone nor particularly significant, but I was determined to create a special evening. Perhaps a gathering at our home would help reconnect us with friends we had been too busy to see. Perhaps it would remind James of the life we had built together, the partnership that had seemed so unshakable just a few years earlier. I sent invitations to 50 of our closest friends and colleagues, ordered catering from our favorite restaurant, arranged for a bartender and server to allow us to enjoy our guests. I selected a new dress, a deep emerald silk that complemented my auburn hair. I spent hours considering the playlist, the flowers, the lighting, creating the perfect atmosphere for celebration. Not once did I imagine that James had entirely different plans for my birthday, plans that involved ending our marriage in the most humiliating way possible. The morning of my birthday dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring Saturday. I woke early, excitement bubbling through me despite the lingering exhaustion from a busy work week. James was still asleep, his back to my side of the bed, a distance that had become increasingly common. I slipped out quietly, padding downstairs to make coffee and review my party checklist one final time. The caterers would arrive at 4, guests at 6. The bar would be set up on the patio, weather permitting, with dinner served buffet-style in the dining room. The cake, a creation from Boston's most sought-after bakery, would be delivered at 5. Everything was arranged, every detail considered. James appeared in the kitchen around 9, dressed in running shorts and a faded Harvard Law t-shirt. He kissed my cheek absently, the gesture more habit than affection. "Happy birthday," he said, pouring himself coffee. "Big day." "Thanks," I replied, watching him carefully. "Are you still okay to help set up this afternoon? The rental company is delivering tables at 2. Sure, he nodded, though his attention was already on his phone, thumbs typing rapidly. "Just need to handle a few emails first." "On Saturday?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "Can it wait until Monday?" He glanced up, a flash of irritation crossing his features. "The Morrison merger doesn't recognize weekends, Mel. Some of us still have to hustle for our success." The barb stung, as it was meant to. I let it pass, unwilling to let conflict darken my birthday. "Right. Well, whenever you're free, I could use the help." James disappeared into his office while I continued preparation. Throughout the morning, I noticed him making several calls, his voice too low to overhear. Twice, his phone buzzed with texts that made him smile in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. When I entered his office to ask about lunch, he quickly flipped his phone face down. "Who is that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Client," he answered too quickly. "Just confirming a Monday meeting." "On your personal phone?" "On Saturday." I pressed. James sighed dramatically. "Yes, Melanie. Some clients prefer the personal touch. Not everything has to follow corporate protocol like at your firm." Again, that subtle dig at my career. I swallowed my retort and changed the subject. "The florist just delivered. Would you mind bringing the arrangements in from the garage?" By late afternoon, our home had transformed into the elegant setting I had envisioned. Cream and gold balloons floated in tasteful clusters. Floral arrangements of white roses and hydrangeas adorned every surface. Crystal glasses sparkled in the soft lighting. The caterers worked efficiently in the kitchen, filling the house with delicious aromas. James had indeed helped with the physical setup, though his mind seemed elsewhere. Several times I caught him checking his watch, an uncharacteristic nervousness in his movements. When the doorbell rang at 5:30, he jumped, then immediately reached for his phone. "Expecting someone?" I asked. "Just checking the time," he mumbled. "I'll get the door." To my surprise, it was Amber standing on our doorstep, a full 30 minutes before the invitation time. She wore a striking black cocktail dress that seemed oddly formal for the garden party atmosphere I had specified on the invitations. Her hair was styled in an elaborate updo, and diamonds glittered at her ears and throat. "Happy birthday, Melanie," she said, air-kissing my cheek and handing me a small, expensively wrapped package. "I hope you don't mind me arriving early. I thought I might help with any last-minute details." Before I could respond, James stepped forward. "Perfect timing, Amber. Those files we discussed are in my office. We should review them before everyone arrives." They exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret, something that seemed to carry weighted meaning. My stomach tightened with unease. "Files? On a Saturday evening?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Surely that can wait until after the weekend." James placed his hand on Amber's back, guiding her toward the hallway. "Just need a quick review. Time-sensitive matter. We'll be right back." I stood in the foyer, clutching Amber's gift, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. Something about their interaction felt rehearsed, planned. Before I could follow them, the doorbell rang again, announcing the arrival of my best friend Sophia and her husband. "Happy birthday, gorgeous," Sophia exclaimed, enveloping me in a hug that smelled of her signature Chanel perfume. She pulled back, studying my face. "What's wrong? You look upset." I forced a smile. "Nothing. Just party stress. Come in, let me get you a drink." As more guests arrived, I fell into the role of gracious hostess, accepting birthday wishes and compliments on the beautiful setting. Throughout it all, I kept glancing toward the hallway leading to James's office, where he and Amber remained sequestered. When they finally emerged, 20 minutes later, Amber's lipstick had been freshly applied, and James was carrying a thick manila folder that he quickly stashed in a drawer of the entryway console. Sophia noticed my distraction. Finding a quiet moment between greeting guests, she pulled me into the pantry. "Seriously, Mel, what's going on? You keep looking at James like you're expecting him to sprout horns." I hesitated, reluctant to voice my suspicions without proof. "Have you noticed anything off about him and Amber? They seem close." Sophia's expression shifted, discomfort replacing concern. "Honey, I didn't want to say anything, especially not tonight, but there have been rumors at the firm." My heart seemed to stop. "What rumors?" "Late nights, closed-door meetings. Kelly from accounting saw them having dinner at Sorellina last month. Just the two of them, in a back corner." Sorellina was an intimate Italian restaurant, far from the office, known for its romantic atmosphere. James and I had celebrated our anniversary there 2 years ago. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, hurt threading through my shock. Sophia squeezed my hand. "It was just office gossip. I had no proof, and I didn't want to upset you unnecessarily. But now, seeing them together." She glanced toward the doorway. "Something doesn't feel right." I straightened my shoulders, smoothing down my emerald dress. "It's probably nothing. Just work." "On your birthday?" Sophia asked gently. I had no answer for that. Instead, I plastered on my most convincing smile and returned to my guests, determined not to let whatever was happening ruin my celebration. But the seed of doubt had been firmly planted, taking root in soil that had been prepared by months of subtle changes and growing distance. As the evening progressed, I watched James and Amber carefully. They weren't overtly attentive to each other, but I noticed the small things. The way their hands brushed when passing drinks, the private smiles exchanged across the room, the synchronicity of their movements, as if operating on a frequency only they could hear. Twice more, they disappeared together, once to check on the cake and later to find more wine in the cellar. Each time they returned, that manila folder made a brief appearance, whispered comments exchanged over its contents. Each time, they separated when they noticed my attention, James suddenly becoming the attentive host, Amber engaging other guests in animated conversation. By the time the party was in full swing, with 30-plus friends and colleagues enjoying the perfect spring evening in our backyard, I was certain something significant was happening beneath the surface of my carefully planned celebration. What I couldn't possibly have imagined was just how devastating that something would turn out to be. As the evening approached 9 o'clock, it was time for the cake cutting, traditionally a highlight of any birthday celebration. The caterer had informed me that everything was ready, the beautiful three-tiered creation now adorned with candles waiting in the dining room. I circulated through our backyard, where guests were enjoying drinks and conversation under strings of soft golden lights, searching for James to join me for this moment. "Has anyone seen James?" I asked, approaching a group that included several of his colleagues from the firm. "Think I saw him heading inside with Amber," one of them replied, a strange expression crossing his face before he quickly looked away. That cold feeling returned to my chest as I made my way back into the house. The main floor was relatively empty, most guests having migrated to the beautiful evening outdoors. I checked the kitchen, the living room, finding both empty. A murmur of voices drew me toward James's office at the back of the house, the door slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the darkened hallway. I moved quietly, years of wearing heels having taught me how to step lightly. As I approached, the voices became clearer, James and Amber engaged in intense conversation. I paused just outside, hidden by the partially open door, suddenly hesitant to interrupt what sounded like an argument. "We agreed to do it during the cake cutting," Amber was saying, her voice carrying a hint of irritation. "That's when everyone will be watching. Maximum impact." "I know what we planned," James replied, sounding tense. "But maybe we should wait until tomorrow. After everyone leaves." "After spending weeks planning this?" Amber's voice rose slightly. "After all the humiliation she's put you through, making you look like her sidekick instead of her husband? No. She deserves this, James. A public reminder that she's not as perfect as she thinks." My blood turned to ice. They were planning something for the cake cutting, something designed to humiliate me. I leaned closer, barely breathing. "You're right," James sighed. "She won't see it coming. That's what makes it perfect." I heard papers rustling, then Amber's voice again, softer now. "Once these are served, we move forward with everything else we discussed. The accounts are ready to be transferred Monday morning." "All set," James confirmed. "She has no idea I've been moving assets for months. By the time her lawyer figures it out, if she even gets a decent one, it'll be too late." Claiming she was unfaithful was brilliant, Amber purred, her tone shifting to something more intimate. "No one will question why you're leaving, and with the prenup terms on infidelity." "She'll get nothing," James finished, a satisfaction in his voice that made me physically ill. 6 months of planning about to pay off. There was silence then, and I risked peering through the crack in the door. What I saw seared itself into my memory. James and Amber locked in a passionate embrace, the divorce papers spread across his desk, champagne glasses near their hands. As they separated, James stroked her face tenderly. "Just think, 6 months from now, this house will be ours. Your name on the deed alongside mine." Amber smiled, tracing her finger down his tie. 6 months of sneaking around worth every moment. "Though I must say, your bed is much more comfortable than the office couch." They laughed together, the sound of their shared intimacy more painful than any physical blow. I backed away silently, my mind racing to process what I'd just witnessed. My husband and his secretary weren't just having an affair. They had been planning for months to blindside me with divorce papers at my own birthday party, in front of all our friends and colleagues. They intended to drain our accounts, claim I had been unfaithful to invalidate our prenuptial agreement's protections, and ultimately take our home. The calculated cruelty of it staggered me. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision or even a recent development. This was methodical, planned destruction, timed specifically to cause maximum public humiliation. I retreated to the powder room off the main hallway, locking the door behind me. In the mirror, my reflection showed a woman I barely recognized, pale with shock, eyes wide with betrayal. The emerald dress I had so carefully chosen now seemed like a costume, a pretense of celebration when my entire life was about to implode. For one terrible moment, I considered simply hiding there until everyone left, avoiding the public spectacle James and Amber had choreographed. The thought of facing those pitying looks, the whispers that would follow, the professional embarrassment was almost unbearable. Then something shifted in my reflection. My shoulders straightened slightly, my jaw set with determination. I had built a successful career through strategic thinking and decisive action. I had navigated boardrooms full of men who underestimated me. I had turned failing campaigns into industry award winners. Why would I allow James and his secretary to script my humiliation? They had spent 6 months planning to destroy me. I had perhaps 20 minutes before the cake cutting to ensure they failed. Taking 3 deep breaths to steady myself, I splashed cold water on my face and reapplied my lipstick. The woman in the mirror now looked composed, determined, nothing like the shattered person who had stumbled in minutes before. I needed allies and information quickly. I slipped out of the powder room and scanned the crowd for Sophia. She stood near the bar, chatting with a colleague from my firm. I approached with measured steps, leaning in to whisper in her ear. "I need your help. Emergency. No questions right now." To her credit, Sophia didn't hesitate. She excused herself from the conversation and followed me to the relative privacy of the kitchen pantry, where catering staff were unlikely to interrupt. "James is planning to serve me divorce papers during the cake cutting," I said without preamble, my voice surprisingly steady. "He and Amber have been having an affair for 6 months. They want to humiliate me publicly." Sophia's expression cycled rapidly through shock, disbelief, and then fierce anger. "That absolute bastard," she hissed. "What do you need me to do? Stall the cake cutting. Tell the caterer we're pushing it back 30 minutes. I need time." She nodded immediately. "Done. What else?" "My brother Derek. Is he still coming? He said he might be late. He texted me he was on his way about 20 minutes ago. Should be here any minute." Derek was not just my older brother, but also a partner at a competing law firm. Having him here would be crucial. "When he arrives, bring him directly to me. Don't let James know he's here." As Sophia left to delay the cake and watch for Derek, I retrieved my phone from my clutch and sent my brother an urgent text. "SOS. James planning divorce ambush tonight. Need lawyer brain ASAP. Bring blank legal pad. Don't let him see you arrive." Derek's response was immediate, 10-minute out. "On it." Next, I needed evidence. If James had been planning this for months, moving assets and preparing documentation, there would be records. His home office was too risky with both of them going in and out, but his laptop might provide what I needed. I knew he often left it in our bedroom when preparing for events, considering it safer than leaving it downstairs with guests around. Making my way upstairs, I carefully avoided being noticed by either James or Amber. Our bedroom was dark and quiet, a strange contrast to the celebration below. Sure enough, James's laptop sat on his nightstand, plugged in to charge. He had grown careless over recent months, no longer locking it when at home. Perhaps he thought I was too trusting or too busy to check. I opened it, finding it unlocked as hoped. His email was still logged in, and I began a rapid search for relevant communications. The evidence was shockingly easy to find, as if he hadn't bothered to hide his tracks at all. Emails between him and Amber dating back 7 months, initially professional but quickly evolving into explicit exchanges. Calendar invitations for lunch meetings at hotels near their office. Most damning of all, correspondence with a private bank in the Cayman Islands regarding a new account established 4 months ago. I took photos of the most incriminating emails with my phone, hands shaking slightly but mind remaining focused. Then I checked his downloaded files, finding a folder labeled Empty Divorce, containing scans of our financial records, property deeds, and a draft petition citing irreconcilable differences and falsely alleging my infidelity with a colleague at my firm. The level of detail was staggering, including manufactured evidence in the form of doctored photos and fake hotel receipts. The calculated malice required to fabricate such evidence struck me anew. This wasn't just about ending our marriage. This was about destroying me personally and professionally. I photographed these documents as well, ensuring I had copies of everything. A soft knock at the bedroom door made me jump. I quickly closed the laptop, returning it exactly as I had found it. "Mel, it's me," Sophia whispered through the door. I let her in, finding Derek standing beside her, concern etched on his features. My brother had always been protective, and the expression on his face now suggested he was barely containing his anger. "Tell me everything," he said, legal pad already in hand. In concise terms, I explained what I had discovered, showing him the photos of emails and documents I had taken from James's laptop. Derek's expression darkened further as he reviewed the evidence of financial deception and the planned ambush. "This is corporate asset hiding," he muttered, making rapid notes. "And attempting to defraud you of your rightful settlement. We can file emergency injunctions first thing Monday morning to freeze those offshore accounts." "I don't have until Monday," I reminded him. "They're planning to serve papers tonight, in front of everyone." Derek's jaw tightened. "Then we preempt them. I'll draft emergency paperwork right now. Where can I work quietly for 15 minutes? I directed him to the guest room at the end of the hall, rarely used and unlikely to be disturbed. As he settled in to prepare whatever legal countermeasures he could, Sophia squeezed my hand. "The cake is delayed. Caterer thinks there's a problem with the refrigeration that needs fixing. Buys you at least half an hour." "Thank you," I whispered, truly grateful for her unwavering support. "What are you going to do?" she asked. For the first time since discovering James's betrayal, I felt a small smile form on my lips. Not one of happiness, but of determined resolve. "I'm going to do what I do best," I answered. "Flip the script. They've been planning a dramatic scene with me as the humiliated wife. I'm going to give them a very different ending." As Derek worked on legal documentation and Sophia returned to the party to maintain appearances, I took 10 minutes alone to fully formulate my plan. James had underestimated me in the most fundamental way. He had forgotten that strategic thinking wasn't just my job, it was my greatest strength. And unlike him, I didn't need 6 months to devise an effective strategy. Sometimes, the best campaigns were crafted under pressure, when creativity and instinct merged with necessity. By the time I descended the stairs to rejoin my birthday celebration, I was no longer the wounded wife. I was a tactician preparing for battle, with the distinct advantage that my opponent had no idea the element of surprise had been lost. James caught my eye from across the room, raising his champagne glass in a toast that now seemed obscenely false. I returned the gesture with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, knowing that the performance he had rehearsed for months was about to face an unexpected rewrite. The caterer approached me at 9:45, informing me that the cake issue had been resolved and asking if I was ready for the cutting ceremony. I nodded, catching Sophia's eye across the room. She gave me a subtle thumbs up, confirming that Derek was positioned and ready with the paperwork he had prepared. "Ladies and gentlemen," the caterer announced, gently tapping a spoon against a glass to gather attention. "If you would all please join us in the dining room, it's time to celebrate with cake." Our guests began moving inside, exclamations of delight rising as they saw the stunning cake displayed on the dining table. 3 tiers of vanilla buttercream frosting decorated with sugar flowers that matched our garden blooms, exactly as I had ordered. 34 candles glowed warmly, creating a magical atmosphere in the dimmed lighting. James materialized at my side, his arm sliding around my waist in a show of affection that now felt like sandpaper against my skin. Amber positioned herself directly across the table, the manila folder clutched in her hands, partially hidden by the folds of her dress. They exchanged a quick glance, a silent confirmation that their moment was approaching. "Make a wish, honey," James said loudly for our guests' benefit, his smile not reaching his eyes. I looked around at the gathered faces, friends and colleagues who had come to celebrate with me, unaware they had been cast as audience members in James's cruel theater. My gaze lingered on Amber, who was practically vibrating with anticipation, fingers tightening on the folder that contained the divorce papers. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and steady, "before I blow out the candles, I'd like to say a few words." This wasn't part of the usual script, and I saw momentary confusion cross James's face. Good. Let him experience a fraction of the disorientation I had felt. First, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, I began, reaching for a champagne flute. It means so much to have all of you here to celebrate with me. I moved slightly away from James, creating distance between us both physically and symbolically. The room had gone quiet, attention focused on me. I'd like to thank each person who made this evening special. The caterers for this amazing food. Sophia, my dearest friend, for always having my back. I made eye contact with various guests as I spoke, building connection. This was a technique I often used in presentations, creating individual relationships within a larger audience. And I'd especially like to thank Amber, I continued, turning to face her directly. Her eyes widened in surprise at being singled out. For her dedication to my husband. The long hours. The private dinners. The hotel meetings carefully disguised as client lunches. A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs spread through the room. James stiffened beside me, his rehearsed confidence faltering. Melanie, he said in a low warning tone, reaching for my arm. I sidestepped his grasp smoothly. Oh, and James, of course. My husband of 7 years. Who spent the last 6 months planning to serve me divorce papers during this very moment. Gasps echoed around the room. Amber's face had drained of color, the folder in her hands suddenly seeming to burn her fingers. That's right, I continued, my voice remaining surprisingly calm. The cake cutting was chosen as the perfect time to publicly humiliate me. A carefully orchestrated scene where I would be blindsided in front of all of you. James moved toward me, his expression a mix of anger and panic. You're being ridiculous. This isn't the place for. For what, James? Truth? Transparency? Are those inconvenient to your plans? I turned back to our stunned guests. While you've all been enjoying this lovely party, my husband and his secretary have been reviewing divorce documents in his office, laughing about how I wouldn't see it coming. The silence in the room was deafening. James's face had morphed from panic to fury, while Amber looked as though she might be sick. She began backing toward the door, but Sophia smoothly moved to block her exit. What they didn't count on, I continued, was me overhearing their conversation. Or finding evidence of the offshore accounts where James has been transferring our joint assets for months. I gestured to Derek, who stepped forward from the edge of the room, legal pad in hand. My brother, as some of you know, is a partner at Caldwell and Schmidt. He's been kind enough to prepare some emergency documentation this evening. James lunged forward, attempting to interrupt. This is absurd. Melanie is clearly having some kind of breakdown. Email correspondence dating back 7 months, I cut in, my voice rising just enough to overpower his. Hotel receipts. Banking records for a Cayman Islands account. All photographed from your laptop upstairs while you were busy finalizing tonight's performance. The color drained from James's face as he realized the extent of my counterattack. His carefully constructed plan was unraveling in real time, in front of the very audience he had assembled to witness my humiliation. You fabricated evidence claiming I was unfaithful, I continued, addressing him directly now. Created fake hotel receipts. Doctored photos. All to trigger the infidelity clause in our prenup and leave me with nothing. Several of James's colleagues were now backing away from him, their expressions a mix of disgust and professional concern. Affairs might be overlooked in their circles, but financial fraud and evidence tampering cross lines that could affect his standing at the firm. James, one of the senior partners, said quietly, "Is this true?" Before he could respond, Amber suddenly stepped forward, her survival instincts apparently kicking in. It was all his idea, she blurted, dropping the folder on the table. Divorce papers spilled across the white tablecloth, stark legal text visible to those nearest. He told me you were terrible to him, that you were cheating, that he needed help gathering evidence. Shut up, James hissed, but it was too late. He promised me partnership track, she continued desperately. Said once the divorce was finalized, he'd make sure I was promoted. That we'd be together officially. The room had transformed into something resembling a courthouse, with our guests as the jury, witnessing testimonies unfolding in real time. James looked frantically between Amber's betrayal and my composed stance, his carefully laid plans disintegrating around him. "I think," I said into the heavy silence that followed, "that this party has taken an unexpected turn. I apologize to all of you for becoming involved in this unfortunate situation." Derek stepped forward, handing James a document. "This is an emergency injunction preventing you from accessing any joint assets, accounts, or properties until formal divorce proceedings can begin. It also includes a restraining order requiring you to leave the premises immediately." "You can't be serious," James sputtered, not even looking at the paper. "This is my house." "Actually," I corrected him, "it's our house. And unlike you, I have no intention of using deception to claim it exclusively. That will be determined through proper legal channels." I turned to our guests, many of whom were watching with expressions ranging from shock to uncomfortable fascination. "I understand if you'd prefer to leave. This certainly isn't the birthday celebration I had planned." Sophia moved to my side, her arm linking protectively with mine. "Or," she suggested, raising her voice to address the room, "we could stay and celebrate Melanie's incredible grace under pressure. Because if anyone deserves support and champagne right now, it's the birthday girl." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, followed by someone starting to applaud. The sound spread, building into sustained clapping that felt like a collective verdict in my favor. James stood frozen, the unread injunction crumpled in his fist, watching as the scenario he had meticulously planned transformed into something entirely different. Instead of witnessing my public humiliation, our friends and colleagues were rallying around me, offering support through their presence and approval. "You should leave now," Derek told him firmly, gesturing toward the door. "Unless you'd prefer I call the police to enforce the restraining order immediately." For a moment, James looked as though he might argue further. Then his eyes met mine, and whatever he saw there, perhaps the absolute certainty that he had lost this battle, finally penetrated. Without another word, he turned and stalked toward the front door, shouldering roughly past guests who no longer moved aside respectfully for him. Amber remained, looking lost and terrified. "Melanie, I should also leave," I finished for her. "Though I suggest not with James. I imagine your professional relationship has significantly changed tonight." As they both disappeared from my home and, effectively, from my life, I turned back to the gathered guests. The cake still waited, candles burning low. "Now," I said, summoning a genuine smile despite the emotional whirlwind of the evening, "I believe I have some wishes to make." I leaned forward and blew out all 34 candles in a single breath, to renewed applause and cheers of support. My first wish had already come true. I had prevented James from controlling the narrative of our ending. The rest would come with time. After the last guest departed around midnight, the house fell into an eerie silence. Sophia and Derek stayed behind, helping me clear the worst of the party debris while the catering staff finished packing their equipment. The cake, barely touched after the dramatic confrontation, sat forlorn on the dining table, a reminder of celebrations interrupted. "You should try to get some sleep," Sophia urged, concern etching her features. "Tomorrow's soon enough to deal with everything else." I shook my head, adrenaline still coursing through my system. "No. James will be regrouping right now, planning his next move. I need to stay ahead of him." Derek nodded in understanding. "The emergency injunction will hold through the weekend, but first thing Monday morning, he'll have his attorneys filing motions. We need to document everything tonight while the evidence is accessible." With Sophia as our witness, Derek and I moved systematically through the house, photographing valuables, art, and furniture. We created a detailed inventory of everything that could be considered joint property, with dates of purchase and approximate values. Derek coached me to narrate video walkthroughs of each room, stating the date and time, providing context for each significant item. "Most divorces become battles over documentation," he explained. "The more thoroughly we record the state of assets now, the harder it will be for James to claim things disappeared or were damaged." While we worked, Sophia made coffee and ordered late-night food delivery, understanding we were in for a long night. Around 1 in the morning, she discovered something troubling. "Mel, your home office filing cabinet is empty," she called from down the hall. "Everything's gone." I rushed to confirm her finding, my stomach sinking as I pulled open drawer after drawer of emptiness. Tax returns, property records, insurance policies, all missing. In their place was a single yellow sticky note with James's handwriting, "Insurance policy." "He took them as leverage," Derek muttered, examining the empty drawers. "Probably while you were busy with guests early in the evening." This discovery lent new urgency to our efforts. If James had removed important documents, what else might he have taken or hidden? What other contingency plans might he have in place? I remembered James's mention of accounts being ready to transfer Monday morning and realized we needed to secure more than just physical assets. "I need to check our financial accounts," I said, moving to my laptop. He may not be able to transfer funds with the injunction in place, but I wouldn't put it past him to have automated transfers already scheduled. Sure enough, logging into our joint investment account revealed pending transactions set to execute when markets opened Monday. Transfers that would move substantial sums to accounts I didn't recognize. With Derek documenting each screen, I canceled every pending transaction, then called the 24-hour customer service line to place verbal holds, explaining the situation to increasingly senior representatives until I reached someone with authority to flag the accounts for fraud protection. "Also change every password you have," Sophia advised, working on her own laptop to create a spreadsheet tracking all the accounts we were securing. Email, social media, cloud storage, everything. This prescient suggestion proved valuable when I discovered login attempts to my personal email while we were working. Someone, James, presumably, was trying to access my accounts remotely, perhaps to delete evidence or gather information about my counteractions. "He's getting desperate," Derek observed grimly. "That's good for us legally, bad for predictability. You shouldn't stay here tonight." I shook my head firmly. "I'm not leaving my home." "That's exactly what he wants." "Then I'm staying too," Sophia declared, brooking no argument. "And we're changing the security codes on the alarm system right now." As dawn approached, exhaustion finally began to overtake adrenaline. We had secured accounts, documented assets, changed passwords, and prepared initial documentation for formal divorce proceedings. Derek had drafted a comprehensive timeline of financial deceptions based on the evidence I'd gathered, creating a compelling narrative of James's months-long planning. "Get some sleep," he insisted, gathering his notes. "I'll head to the office and start drafting the official petition. Better to file first thing Monday than wait for his team to make the first move." After Derek left, Sophia insisted on taking the guest room nearest to the master bedroom, not willing to leave me alone in the house. As I finally crawled into bed around 6 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You have no idea what you've done." I showed the message to Sophia, who immediately documented it and added it to our evidence file. "Classic intimidation tactic," she said dismissively. "He's trying to regain control through fear." But as Sunday unfolded, it became clear that James's threats weren't empty. By mid-morning, I discovered my company email had been flooded with messages from concerned clients, all referencing a disturbing email they had received regarding my personal conduct. Somehow, James had obtained my client contact list and sent a mass communication filled with the same false allegations of infidelity he had prepared for the divorce filing, framed as a professional courtesy to warn them about my character issues. The damage control took hours, with Sophia helping me craft individual responses to each client, explaining the situation without creating additional drama. Most were understanding, even sympathetic, but the incident revealed how far James was willing to go to retaliate. By Sunday evening, we learned from a colleague that James had taken a temporary office at a competing law firm, one known for aggressive divorce litigation. He had also withdrawn a significant amount of cash from his personal account, just under the amount that would trigger reporting requirements. "He's preparing for a siege," Derek explained during our strategy call. "Setting up alternative resources, trying to insulate himself." "What about Amber?" I asked, wondering if she remained an ally in his plans after her betrayal at the party. A quick social media check revealed she had scrubbed all connection to James and his firm from her profiles. By Monday morning, we confirmed through industry contacts that she had called in sick, then submitted her resignation via email, effective immediately. She's cutting losses, Sophia observed. Smart, if self-serving. Monday brought the formal legal battle into full swing. Derek filed our divorce petition the moment the courts opened, along with additional motions to freeze assets we had discovered in James's private accounts. By noon, we received notice that James's attorneys had filed competing motions, attempting to paint me as the deceptive party who had planned the divorce ambush as a public humiliation tactic. Classic Darvo, Derek explained. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. He's claiming you did exactly what he did, hoping to create enough confusion that the truth becomes murky. The strategy might have worked had we not gathered such comprehensive evidence during those critical first hours. The email trails, financial records, and witness statements from party guests created a timeline too consistent to effectively dispute. By Monday afternoon, the initial hearing had been scheduled for Wednesday, with temporary orders maintaining the status quo until then. I returned to work on Tuesday, determined not to let James's actions derail my professional life any further. The support from my colleagues was overwhelming and somewhat unexpected. News of the birthday party confrontation had spread through professional circles, with many expressing admiration for how I had handled the situation. You know what they're calling you now? My assistant mentioned during our morning briefing. The Ice Queen. Not in a bad way, she hurried to add. They say you were glacially calm while dismantling your husband's scheme. It's meant as a compliment. The nickname made me smile despite everything. In marketing, reputation often translated to opportunity, and demonstrating grace under extreme pressure certainly aligned with the professional image I had always cultivated. True to form, James made one final attempt at regaining control before Wednesday's hearing. Late Tuesday evening, his attorney reached out to Derek with a settlement offer that, at first glance, appeared surprisingly generous. James would withdraw all allegations, agree to an equal division of assets, and surrender any claim to the house in exchange for a single condition: absolute confidentiality about the circumstances of our separation. He's trying to protect his professional reputation, Derek explained as we reviewed the offer in my kitchen. The story's already circulating, but without official confirmation, it remains gossip. Once it's entered into court records, it becomes verifiable fact that could impact his partnership track. So he wants me to help him save face after he tried to destroy mine? I clarified, the irony not lost on me. Essentially, yes. I considered the offer carefully, weighing the benefits of a quick, clean settlement against the principle of the matter. After everything James had done, the deception, the planned public humiliation, the attacks on my professional relationships, did he deserve the protection of my silence? What would you advise? I asked Derek, respecting his legal expertise despite our personal connection. He thought for a moment before answering. Professionally, I'd say take the deal. It's financially sound and avoids a potentially messy court battle. Personally, as your brother. He shook his head. I think there's value in truth being entered into official record. In the end, I chose a third option, demonstrating the strategic thinking that had built my career. I counteroffered. I would agree to limited confidentiality regarding specific details, provided James issued formal retractions to any clients he had contacted, publicly withdrew all false allegations, and agreed to additional financial terms accounting for the professional damage his actions had caused. He can save enough face to preserve his career, I explained to Derek, but not enough to escape consequences entirely. After 2 hours of back-and-forth negotiations, James accepted the modified terms. By midnight, we had a preliminary agreement that would be formalized at the hearing, effectively ending our marriage with terms far different from what he had originally planned. As I signed the necessary documents, I felt no joy or triumph, only a calm certainty that I had navigated the crisis as effectively as possible, protecting both my assets and my dignity in the process. James had grossly underestimated not just my awareness, but my strategic capabilities, a miscalculation that had ultimately cost him far more than a straightforward divorce would have. The battle had been brutal but brief, a testament to the power of quick thinking and decisive action. As Wednesday dawned, I prepared to face James in court one final time, not as the humiliated wife he had intended to create, but as an equal adversary who had ultimately outmaneuvered him at his own game. 6 months have passed since that fateful birthday night. I sit in my redecorated home office, sunlight streaming through windows now adorned with curtains in shades of blue rather than the beige James had insisted upon. The room, like much of the house, has been transformed, shedding the last visual reminders of my former marriage. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago, the settlement largely adhering to the terms we negotiated that Tuesday night. I kept the house, my retirement accounts remained intact, and the financial deception James had attempted was formally acknowledged in court documents, though specific details remained sealed by mutual agreement. Professional consequences followed naturally, without my intervention. James's law firm, concerned about potential liability and damage to their reputation, quietly moved him from the partnership track to a less prominent position. Several key clients requested reassignment to other attorneys. While he remains employed, the career trajectory he had so carefully cultivated has been significantly altered. Amber fared worse. Her abrupt resignation and the whispered circumstances surrounding it made finding equivalent employment difficult. LinkedIn shows she eventually relocated to Chicago, taking an administrative position at a significantly smaller firm, her ambitions of partnership association apparently shelved. My own career, surprisingly, flourished in the aftermath. The professional composure I maintained throughout the ordeal impressed key clients and senior leadership alike. 2 months ago, I was promoted to executive vice president, with expanded responsibilities and a compensation package that would have made James seethe with resentment. Sophia remains my closest friend, our bond strengthened by the crisis we weathered together. She was the one who insisted, after the divorce was finalized, that I deserved a proper birthday celebration to replace the memory of the disastrous one. A do-over, she called it, organizing an intimate gathering at my favorite restaurant with just our closest friends. No elaborate decorations, no performative social media moments, just genuine connection and support. It was during that dinner that I finally felt the last weight of James's betrayal begin to lift. Looking back, I can identify the warning signs I chose to ignore: the growing distance, the guarded phone, the unexplained absences, the subtle resentment of my success. I had been so committed to the narrative of our perfect partnership that I'd rationalized each red flag, creating explanations that preserved the illusion of our marriage. That willful blindness nearly cost me everything. Had I not overheard their conversation, had I not acted decisively in those critical first hours, James's plan might have succeeded. The financial recovery alone would have taken years, not to mention the professional and personal humiliation he had choreographed so carefully. The experience taught me invaluable lessons about trust, intuition, and self-reliance. I've learned to acknowledge uncomfortable truths rather than constructing comforting fictions. I've recognized that my strategic thinking is not just a professional skill, but a personal strength that serves me in all aspects of life. Most importantly, I've discovered that resilience isn't about avoiding pain, but about moving through it purposefully. The night I found James and Amber conspiring felt like the end of my world as I knew it. In many ways, it was. But endings create space for new beginnings, opportunities that might never have emerged otherwise. Last weekend, I hosted another gathering in my backyard, a housewarming of sorts to celebrate the completed renovations. As friends and colleagues mingled under the same string lights that had witnessed last year's drama, I found myself engaged in conversation with Michael, a client I've worked with for years who recently started his own company. "I always admired your marketing strategies," he said, refreshingly direct. "But after seeing how you handled last year's situation, I realized you're exactly the kind of person I want to work with long-term. Someone who faces challenges head-on, with integrity and intelligence." That conversation has evolved into discussions about a potential partnership role with his growing firm, an opportunity that aligns perfectly with my vision for the future. A future that, for the first time in years, is entirely of my own design. The betrayal James and Amber planned was meant to diminish me, to reduce me to a victim of their scheming. Instead, it became the catalyst for reclaiming my autonomy, for building a life more authentic and fulfilling than the one I had settled for. If you're watching this and recognizing similar warning signs in your own relationship, trust your instincts. Document everything. Build your support network. Remember that your value isn't determined by someone else's treatment of you, but by your own resilience and determination. Have you ever had to completely restart after betrayal? How did you rebuild? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience might provide the guidance someone else desperately needs right now. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content about overcoming life's unexpected challenges. Remember that sometimes, the moments that seem designed to break us actually reveal just how unbreakable we truly are. Thank you for watching, and may you find the strength to turn every setback into a setup for something better than you ever imagined.